wow. Hey,
Whoa.
Hi. Hello, Internet. Hi. How you doing over there? Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Maxon booth. That's the Internet.
Hi, Internet.
That's the entire Internet.
Is that the one that scans your eyes and get the world coin? You stare into that.
That's the world coin cam right there.
Nice.
So, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Maxon booth at SIGGRAPH. Last presentation of day 2, and I have to tell you, you're in for a treat. Longtime educator, big-time community builder, and all-around amazing person, EJ Hassenfratz. Let's give a big round of applause for EJ Hassenfratz.
Thank you, Matthias. Thank you, everyone, for showing up. Hi, everybody on the Internet. Thanks for tuning in. My name is EJ Hassenfratz, creative director at School Motion. Any School Motion folks in the audience? Heck yeah, all right. Okay, yeah, kind of, you know. Well, thanks for coming out. I teach 2 courses over at School Motion. Might be updating one. And so is Joey Kornman. We got some big things coming out at School of Motion in the fall, so stay tuned for that. But these are the 2 courses I teach. I'm all about teaching Cinema 4D, making 3D accessible to everyone, no matter what skill level. I know 3D can be very intimidating for a lot of people, so I'm always happy to show people how easy it is to actually learn 3D. And that's why I love Cinema 4D anyways, because it just is a very artist-centric tool. So actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. This is Sumo Pug. I got my lucky pug here because I need all the luck I can get during these presentations because I'm pretty terrible. But this is what we're going to be doing today. But before that, I got to do the obligatory demo reel showing. And so here is a little taste of the type of work that I do. If you couldn't tell, big fan of cute things with giant eyeballs, and of course that is pugs fall under that category. But this is what I'm going to be showing off today. So I made this like cute little character, and what I'm going to do is show you how to use mocap data that you can actually shoot yourself and apply it to a rig in Cinema 4D. So, oh, there's the animation. I just had to, I'm very noob to, I know Cinema 4D inside and out, know nothing about PowerPoint, so, but that's the, so that movement, dang it, what happened there? So that's me, I don't know why that stretched out like that. See, I don't know PowerPoint, but that's me doing a ridiculous, here, let me actually just show the movie. I don't know why that's doing that. Yeah, let's see me really, okay, so that's doing that too. I don't know why that's doing that. But that you gotta trust that I'm doing this little mocap here, and that's not supposed to be cut off. But basically what's going on is I did this mocap right here. It's actually really hard to do this sumo squat thing, like the stability and the strength and the core strength. Like you have these big guys, you think they're very athletic. I could not hold that pose for very long. But anyway, so what I actually used to record that, let me see if I can actually get, there we go. Okay, so this app right here, you can download it. It's called Move AI, okay? And you download it on the App Store. Typically what they've done in the past is you can set up like up to at least, I think, 2 to 3 iOS devices. So whether you have an iPhone, iPad, whatever, you basically set it up in your room and you triangulate things out, and you can set up motion capture that's very, very accurate with minimum cleanup, no suit whatsoever. And all you got to do is like pay for the minutes of processing, stuff like that. And so this app right here is, so that would require, not expensive mocap suits, but it would require you to have multiple iOS devices. You can buy, pretty cheap, refurbished iPhones and stuff like that. It has to be iPhone 11 and later because it has all the, what do you call the old depth tracking stuff in it. And so they just released in like the past couple months, it's called Move 1, and it just uses one iPhone. And it's in beta right now. And so there's a few limitations. Number one, it doesn't track fingers just yet. But I tracked all of this, and like my feet's off the ground, and if you know traditional mocap suits and stuff, like if you leave your feet off the ground or anything, it goes all over the place. It doesn't know when your feet leaves the ground, all that kind of stuff. And so I recorded this, and what I'm going to show you is how I use just this with a single iPhone to create some pretty cool motion capture of this little character here, and apply that animation to this very stylized character, because I feel like all the time we see mocap done for very humanoid characters, but like that's not my vibe. I like to do more stylized stuff. So here's another example of, I'm not showing the actual video of me doing that, but you could, that's me trying to do like a penguin waddle, there you go, and applying it to a character. And it's actually extremely easy to do this kind of stuff. So I had way too much fun with this app. Like I said, it's in beta, it's free right now. Again, the only limitation on the Move 1 is doesn't track hands, and you're limited to 10 seconds. So actually, if you get on the beta, if you go on the website, just Google the Move AI. And you should be able to sign up for beta, and you just enter your email, all that kind of stuff. And the more people record stuff for it, the better it's going to get. Like, it's pretty incredible, the minimal amount of cleanup that you need for that. So let me just go back into this presentation here. So this was left intentionally blank. So what I'm going to be covering today is, first I'm going to talk a little bit about just some like modeling workflows. We had Ian show like incredible ZBrush workflows, but I want to show how you can actually utilize some sculpting and ZBrush options from ZBrush inside of Cinema 4D, so you never have to even leave Cinema 4D to use some of the power of ZBrush. And then working with mocap. How to transfer that mocap that I captured with that Move 1 app, again, just using my iPhone, a single iPhone. How to tweak it, smooth out, and fix some of the mocap stuff too. Weighting, which is always the most fun thing to deal with. Like, can we just have an AI to do that? Like, can we stop doing the creative stuff with the AI? Just let it do the stuff we don't want to do, not the stuff we want to do. So weighting stuff, some tips, and then just some animation tips as well. So one thing I'll tell you about, as far as like, I'm a terrible illustrator. But one thing I always find very helpful when you're sketching out things is, just sketch things out. Before you go into Cinema 4D or any app, always have a clear idea or a concept before you jump in, because I know we've probably all done it where we jump into any of our apps and we don't do any sketching or concepting or anything like that, and we just hop right in and we just have that like blank page syndrome, and you're like, okay, well, how do I do, what am I doing, and then how do I do that thing? If you sketch something out, you have a clear idea of like, okay, if I'm sketching out this character right here, I have a good idea of how I'm going to model it. And how you can do that is actually doing a what's called a turnaround. So it's a 5-point turnaround. Basically, it's if you have a character idea or whatever you're doing, you want to sketch it out. And then you're not thinking of like, because I know what I do too is like, well, I don't know how to model that, so I'm not going to make that. But here, if you sketch something out, you're kind of just like, I'm sketching this out, I think this looks cool, it's going to do, and I'll figure out how to do it later, right? So you're actually pushing yourself because you're not thinking about the technical aspects of sketching. So 5-point turnaround, you want to do like your front facing pose, your 3/4 pose, side pose, back 3/4 pose, and your back pose. And so what this helps you do versus like, I used to just sketch like the front view or the 3/4 view, but what this helps you do is visualize the actual 3D volume of the character before you get into any of your 3D apps, right? Because usually you sketch something out and then you're trying to figure out that in Cinema or in whatever you're working in. And I think this is just a great way to figure out the volume. Also figure out, like, is there any back details? Is it wearing a backpack? Is your character wearing a backpack? All that kind of stuff. And so you don't have to guess about how do you model the back detail of your character. And so the secret ingredient to drawing these guides, and drawing the turnarounds, is just creating a bunch of guides for all, like, the most important things. So here you can see this artist did, was not me. This is some other artist. But you basically draw like the top of the eyes, bottom of the eyes, bottom of the neck, top of the neck, bottom of the neck, all those major details, and then you just, like, hash that out. So for this Sumo Pug character, again, I apologize. I don't claim to be an excellent 2D. I'm not teaching illustration in this talk. But you can see I got my proportions and everything. And I'm like, typically, again, I would just focus on the front and then figure everything out when I go into Cinema 4D. But learning about the turnarounds and how it's important to get that volume, you can actually use all of these sketches here inside of Cinema to start helping you model, so you're not just modeling from nothing. So yeah, let's go and dive into Cinema 4D. So I'll show you how you can actually use those turnarounds to start modeling. So let me actually just turn off all this stuff here. And so let's go and let's find the where is the turnaround? There we go. So one thing you might not know is that you can actually just drag and drop images into the interface. So if I wanted to model the character and use this turnaround image, what I could do is just bring up my 4-up view. And let me bring this back up. And let's just say you want to have a background in each of these views. So I can just drag and drop directly into my right viewport here and do the same thing for the front view. And I didn't draw a top view, but you could draw a top view. And then also what I can do is have a plane object, have that face actually -Z. And let's get rid of the width and height segments here. And what we can do is also just drag and drop this image directly onto that plane. And it'll ask you if you want to actually save that image in your text file that's in your folder, in the project file, and I'm just going to say no. But you can see that this is all kind of stretched out. So what I can do is go in here, just kind of eyeball that. And actually what you would typically do is, like, find out the resolution of your image and then just type in those values. But I'm not going to bore you with that. So we'll just do something like this. And what we can also do in these views is click on that view and then go to mode and view settings. And right here in the back tab, that is where you can load up that image. That's where that image is being referenced, and then you can, adjust the size, you can adjust the transparency. And so what I'm going to do is, like, just offset this. So this is the right view, and so I'll have the right facing view for here, something like that. And then this front view, do the same thing in this back tab, go to transparency, and then adjust, not the size, but the offset. And so I would just kind of center up that front-facing view right there. So then let me make sure that that snout is right smack in the center line there. And so what I can do at this point is kind of build like two panels that go together. And so what I'll do with this is, let's go and I'll change the mapping on this material to, let's do flat, and then I'll right click and go to fit to object. So there we go, we'll fit back to that. And so what we can do at this point is, like, I can just, like, crop this. Whoop, not like that. And I'll just move, use the offsets here to move this up like so. And so there's the front view. And then I can go and duplicate that and rotate this 90 degrees. And this can be, I'll offset this so we get the front-facing view. Where's the front-facing view? Actually, it's that, but it's the other way around. So I'll actually have to go -100 and flip it. And let's adjust. What did I do? Adjust it. Oh, there we go. Went to 0, not negative 100. There we go. And so, where's the front? Front view. Front view. Where are you? There you go. So now you kind of see what's going on. So now I have this like these two little cards that I can now go and start modeling. My actual geometry. So I have this sketch that I can then model to, and one thing that's really cool is I can go into here and go and choose X-ray, and we got the X-ray vision. We can see through that, and then we can also adjust the size of these views as well to match the size of these sketches. So I can go garage shading and go to this view mode, view settings, and then just adjusting the size. So we have all of these views to be able to start, sketching everything out. So one thing I like to show with modeling is that, because it's relatively new, is some of the global symmetry options. So typically, you would model something, delete half of it, go and throw it in a symmetry object, and do things that way. So let me just show that real quick. So typically, if you want to model symmetrically, you would go in, select this, right here, hit 0 to get your rectangular selection, delete half, throw this in a symmetry object, and then make it whole again, and then adjust the tolerance and make sure that when the middle crosses the plane, it's nice and seamless. And then we can go and let me go to point mode here, and I can select these points, and you can see that it's mirroring, right? But that was like kind of the old workflow that we used to do in Cinema. So now we can go, let me just undo all that. And so what we can do at this point is we don't need the symmetry object. We can go to the little butterfly here. This is the global symmetry. So I can turn this on, go to this area here, and this is your symmetry hub where you can say what axes are we going to be modeling in. And so let me make sure that we go in here. And so now you can see the mirror plane there. And so if I select this, you can see that we are now mirroring here. And I can go into this menu here again and go in Z. And so you can see that now we're mirroring the X and the Z. So I can kind of shape this however I want and just have to shape one side. So one thing I also like to do is, I know ZBrush has amazing sculpting tools. I haven't quite learned it yet, so one thing I want to tell people is that typically I would go and select point by point all this stuff to get it right into place. That's a really very laborious way to do it. So what I recommend you do is just use some of the basic sculpting brushes inside of Cinema. So it's in the mesh brushes, and I'm just going to tear off this menu. And you can even dock it to the side as well. You can right click and go and just change the icon size as well. And so I could just use the grab tool, and I could just grab and kind of do stuff like that. So I'm not selecting each of these individual points, which I used to do all the time, and it's very laborious. And if you hold the shift key down, it's going to smooth, but that smooth is very heavy-handed. So I'll go to the smooth, bring down that strength, and then go to grab, and so I can go and just smooth things out and get a nice round mesh there. Okay, so that's kind of how my process for kind of modeling. Now, as far as sometimes I'll use Forger. I'm very used to using Forger, and Ian was just showing you how to get some of that, decimate a very high poly mesh and bringing it into Cinema. But sometimes, especially when you're doing rigging, like a mesh like this really isn't going to cut it, right? You need to have something a little bit more. Actually, let me bring in one of the sculpted scenes here. So I have these sculpt files, and so I sculpted, and so let's just get the sumo pants. And actually, let me redo that, because let me go and when you're working in a sculpting app, it's always helpful to make sure you have the right scale. So I got the figure object here. You can see how small that sculpt file came in here. So what you could do is go to mode, and then project info, or not project info, project, where is it? View, let's see. Actually, let me just do this the easier way. So when you bring in something sculpted, these are just STL files. So there's that. I don't want that one. Let's go to the belly band. And so what you can do is you can actually set the scale right before you import it. So I know that this is going to be 65, and we'll say, yep. And so now this brought in at actually 65. Oh, there's the scale right there. So you can also do this in here where you can scale the whole entire project. And so effectively, if you didn't do it when you import, you can do it here in the target scale. So now when I go and make my little scaly figure object, so this is a handy object to use because this is modeled in a real world scale of like a 6-foot human being. So you can see if I had my little pug character, the sumo pants would be, you know, about that big if my little dog character was kind of small. So always remember that, or your sculpt files that you bring in will be super, super tiny. So again, let me Command D, project scale. Let's scale it up maybe 3 times. And so that scaled everything up. But if I delete that figure object and then create another one, you can see how much bigger that got. Okay, so that's some big undies. So let's go and delete the figure. And so if I hit N and then B to get into my garage sitting with lines, we have that like kind of decimated mesh that Ian was showing that you get from some of these sculpting apps, right? And this is not going to work when you do weight painting and your rigging, right? So what you can do is utilize some of the tools from ZBrush that are inside of Cinema 4D. And one of those is the ZRemesher. So if you go and you grab your remesh object here, you can basically do decimation in Cinema. So I have this very highly dense mesh. I'm going to throw the belly band in the remesh. And basically what you can do is set either by polygon count, like Ian was just showing, where you can actually, you know, if you need a specific polygon count, you can type that in, or you can go to a percentage of the original mesh density. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this down pretty low to like 4. And you can see right down here, it's doing its thing, and it works really, really fast. Like you can see how dense this mesh is, and boom. Like that looks pretty good. Like that will actually work if you want to do any rigging or weight painting or anything like that. But the problem is we lost all that wrinkly detail that we like sculpted in, right? So a lot of people don't really dive into the remesh object other than like just doing the mesh density slider, and that's it. But there's actually some really cool things you can do to, say, bring back the detail of like some of the wrinkles that I had sculpted there. You can see those really nice wrinkle details, and we just totally lose them, right? So one thing is this adaptiveness. And so what this does is if you crank up this value, what it's going to say is like, okay, it's going to try to recognize where it needs more detail and adapt the polygon count to those regions. But because, I mean, you can kind of see in those wrinkled details right here, but our mesh density is so low, it's really not, we're not really seeing that much. So another thing you can do is do this adaptive count. What the adaptive count's going to do is basically say like, well, we can actually push the limit beyond this 4% within reason to add in more detail in those little adaptive areas that have more detail. But again, still too low. So we can even more fine-tune this by using this density map. And what this density map does is it takes a vertex map, and depending on the vertex map strength, it will actually give it more mesh density than you would originally do that. So if I'm going to go to this object here, let me turn this off real quick, and let me go to my vertex map tool here, and I'm just going to zoom in. And so I know I need, you know, this nice little crease here, so I'm just going to paint. And so anything yellow is going to be 100% strength vertex map, and everything red is going to be 0. I know, that was amazing. Thank you. And so here's a little detail here. And then I know there's like this detail right down the center. And then I had like some wrinkled detail like here, here, and like on this other side. And so I have stuff on the side and the back, but I'm not going to worry about that. So you can hold the shift key down as well and like blur it out a little bit, just like a, you know, a blur brush. And so we can blur that a little bit. And so we got our vertex map, right? So I'm going to turn back on the remesher. And so I'm going to throw in the vertex map in that density map. And let me just go to my move tool to get rid of the vertex map there. But now it's going to calculate. And you're also going to see there, you're really not seeing much of a difference there either, but you see there's this density scale that gets activated. And what this value is it's going to give whatever the density map is, it's going to actually apply 200% of the original density to those areas on the vertex map. So this goes all the way up to 400. So I can say, give me 4 times the amount of detail than the rest of the mesh in those areas that the vertex map's working on. You can kind of see, if it'll be way more obvious if I crank up the density, mesh density here just a little bit more. And so watch these little areas here. Wait for it. So you're seeing a little bit more of that detail than we had before. So if I go and I just delete this, actually let me make a copy and do it 1-to-1. Whoops. Move that up. So this is the one with the density scale. This one on the bottom, I'll just remove that. Whoop. And that just went up. So this is the one without the density map. And we'll wait for it to calculate right there. And so you can see that just by painting that vertex map, we're getting a lot more detail. Actually, 4 times the amount of detail than we typically would. And we still have a fairly light mesh. And again, you can go and bring down that mesh density altogether and really have a lot of fine-tuned control using that vertex map. So that's a super cool thing. So that's kind of what I had to do to throw everything into Mixamo to rig everything up. And so let me just show. Here we go. So Mixamo. Everyone's used Mixamo, right? You just upload your character. You actually export out an FBX of your model, and you upload it. It's going to process it. So there's my pretty low poly model. There's some of the little wrinkle details in the little sumo pants. And all the head stuff, like I really don't have to worry about like the eyebrows or anything like that, because I know I'm just going to make all of that attached to the head. So I didn't have to do that. But something that's going to move and deform with like the body kind of distorting with the torso, that's where I had to, make sure that everything was pretty light as far as poly count goes. And so the whole Mixamo workflow, you put all the markers in there. And something that when you're working with stylized characters, like it's sometimes very hard to get the auto rig to do what you want, because we're dealing with like stubby arms and like a very condensed neck. And so what I ended up having to do is actually adjusting this character a little bit, moving the head up a little bit and making sure there was a clear definition between the neck here and the arms, because it would just like crunch up. So sometimes you got to adjust your mesh if you want to go this like auto rigging route, which is very helpful because weighting is a very big pain. So here you can see doing the Roomba. And you can see we've got quite a bit of like weighting issues. All that tearing is just all weighting issues. And I'll explain, if you're not familiar with weight, what that is a little bit later. But we got, but the main thing you want to know is like, okay, well, the head's definitely defined. The arms are definitely defined. They're bending pretty nice. And the legs are also pretty fine. You also want to make sure that when you export your model, let me just show really quick, that your feet are flat on the ground. So if you had, and your character's like right down the center of your scene, if your character was like through the floor, Mixamo would just chop the legs off. So you want to make sure that it's on the plane floor there. And then basically once that looks good, I just select a T-pose. So you just search for T-pose in the top menu bar there, and there's that little scarecrow. You apply that, because that's all you need, is that T-pose, and then you just download an FBX and just leave all the settings the same default, and you download it, okay? Now, there's another awesome alternative to Mixamo that is also free. And from what I've heard, it's actually, it's a little bit better just because it's actually been updated in the past 5, 6, 7 years. It's called AccuRig. Winbush isn't here, but Jonathan Winbush, if you follow him on his YouTube, he did a really awesome tutorial about this AccuRig and using it with not only Unreal Engine, but also Cinema 4D. So it's same kind of setup as Mixamo, where you bring in an FBX file that you export from Cinema 4D. Same kind of setup too, where you have your character in there, you make sure it looks good, feet flat on the ground. It's going to evaluate the body joints, and there's going to be a lot more of those markers that you are working with, so very similar to Mixamo. You make sure symmetry is turned on, and you can just start placing all those markers just like you did in Mixamo, right? And so there's a few like more definition, like there's a foot, joint, and there's like a top of the like heel joint that you don't really have in Mixamo, and so you're giving a little bit more information to, and you can even like rotate it in space and stuff. And so I'm just placing the toe joints there. Sorry, the little play bars there. And you can define the number you can define the number of fingers too. So I'm just gonna no fingers at all, because again, that Move AI app doesn't actually track your fingers anyway. So I don't need that to be rigged. And so very similar to Mixamo, it's gonna calculate everything once you place those markers. And then you can see that they have their own little library of little moves and stuff like that. And so you can see that like the weight, again, this is all weighting issues. Like different parts of the skeleton are deforming different parts of the mesh that it shouldn't. So it's just trying to do its best job to like auto weight this stuff. And so there's some weird stuff going on there. But again, if you wanted to use this AccuRig, again, I'm just looking at the arms and the feet, and that actually, the legs and the arms actually are deforming pretty good for an auto weight for a very stylized character. Face is all jacked up, but that's very easy to fix actually, as I'll show a little bit. So again, you'll just export this out, and this will actually export out. You can export out to anything. You got your Cinema 4D 18 and below, and 19 and I almost said 19 and older. Yeah, 19. I guess it is older, or no, newer, younger. And so you just do that, and you can have embedded textures, and you just export out an FBX, and it'll also export out a T-pose. So let's go. And so we got our rig, right? And so this is what this will look like. So I just have a rig. Actually, that's not what it looks like, because it doesn't have the skeleton. Let me go to here. Okay. So here is a version of, this is the AccuRig skeleton. It's got a little bit more skeleton to it, a little more joints to it. And then there's the Mixamo version, which is named Mixamo hips, all this kind of stuff. So Mixamo actually has less amounts of joints, and it actually plays much nicer with the workflow that I'm going to show to transfer mocap data to this rig right here. So you can see that there's some, like the feet joints are all messed up. So there might be some things, again, with the stylized characters that Mixamo will get you 80% of the way, and then you got to do a little bit of cleanup. So first thing I notice as well is, so you have all these joints, right? And that's the skeletal structure that we're using to actually weight and define things. And actually, if you go and you hold Control Command key down and you right click under your cursor, you'll see all the objects that are under your cursor. And so I can go and say, okay, get that joint right there, whoop, right there. And then I can select it and move it. And you can see that, okay, that's not supposed to be mapped to that. So that's a little weird. But we also have our geometry. And what we can do at this point is, if I turn off the skin here, this is actually the deformer that is going to help the joints deform the mesh. And so if I turn that off, you can see that little pop. That's not supposed to happen. So what you can end up doing is turning that off, going to your weight tag, resetting the bind pose to go back to where it was set up to begin with, and then just with that skin tag turned off, hold the shift key down and go to set bind pose. And when I turn that skin deformer back on, you're not going to see that jump. Okay, so there was a little bit of wonkiness there. Another thing I'm going to do is, with the skin deformer turned off, I'm going to go and I'm going to select that left foot and just rotate that, and do the same thing over here. And so the feet aren't all pointing inwards, which is very odd. And so we'll again go and say, okay, this is where we should start from, is that T-pose right here. So I'll go and hold the shift key down again and hit set bind pose, turn that back on, and this will now, if I go and select this will actually be, the joints will be aligned better. And I actually just undid that. Let's go forward. All right, I just undid that work, but that should work normally. And then you can see that, like, the elbows, and so there's some stuff that you could fix. Number one being the weighting. And so how you can fix the weighting is going over here And you can see this is where I like fixed all the joints and all that stuff. And so if I go and turn off the subdivision surface, and here's the body here, and let me actually just delete all this stuff. One easy way to fix a lot of the weirdness that might happen with if I go and say, select this joint and move this. Oops. There we go. Rotate that up. You can see that that's pulling the pants, and it shouldn't. There's one like very easy thing you can do to see if it solves all of your issues, and that is something called the Delta Mush. It's a very fun name to say, but Delta Mush, basically, if you apply it after the skin deformer that's actually deforming your mesh, see how that kind of fixed that? So it's using an algorithm to kind of fix the weighting magically. And so you can see now, with that Delta Mush on, I mean, it's still a little whacked out, but it's a lot less whacked out than it was before. So Delta Mush sometimes helps out a little bit, but when Delta Mush doesn't do everything you want, that's when you go into the nitty-gritty, put your Bob Ross wig on, you discover the joy of weight painting. And so if you shift double click on the weight tag there, what's going on when you rig a character is you got these joints, right? And so this body mesh here, if I go to the joints, you can see there's all these joints that are influencing this entire body mesh. So if I select the hips, which are these yellow joints here, anything that is yellow means that those joints are going to be influencing and deforming any of those vertices that are that yellow color. And so if I go to the head, you can see that there's this big head joint, and that's this is what the color code's coming from, that like lime green. Anything that's color coded that is going to move along with this joint. And if I select that joint, you can see that's what's going on, right? So to fix some of this stuff, what you can easily do is like go in, and sometimes I'll just select some of these, and sometimes you'll find like, okay, the left arm probably should not be doing anything over here. So with that left arm selected, you can actually go to Character, Weight Tool, and if you hold the Control key down, you can actually remove weight influence. So subtract, so you can see I'm painting here, and so if I go to left forearm, you can see, okay, maybe I don't want the forearm to affect the shoulder, so I'll delete some of that weighting there. And in the weight tool, you can also choose visible only or uncheck that. And I can go to the left hand and maybe delete some of this, because the left hand, that tiny little joint right there, should only be affecting this area. And so right shoulder, you can kind of see like, this is like really far out, so I'll delete some of this area here. The right arm, and then like the left leg, the left foot. You can see that the left foot's like only this side, so we can actually add to this selection by painting, or what we can do is go to polygon mode. Whoops, that's all weird. But we can actually go and select polygons. So I'll select that loop selection, hit U and then L, or U and F to do fill. And so I'll hold the shift key down, select those points, and I'll say, okay, all of these polygons, all of these vertices should be mapped and go along and deform with the foot joint there. So I can go and select that left foot, hold the shift key down, go to commands, and go to absolute 100% and apply that left foot influence to those vertices. So I'll do apply selected, boom. So I can even go to this loop selection here and say, okay, that should be left leg, so apply, and then these polygons here, that should be the upper left leg, and maybe even like some of this too. So I can go apply selected, and I can go like, okay, well maybe this polygon here, this one here, and these, maybe that'll be 50% strength, so I'll apply 30% strength to those things. So that's an easy way to kind of do some weighting that way. And so that's one easy way to do that. Another thing to do as well is to select all the weights by just selecting this weight tag there and going to smooth and just smoothing everything out. And that will really help add smooth deformation, right? And so with a combination of manual fixing the weights and using that Delta Mush, which is fun to say, you can have some nice deformations that are a lot better than they were before. So I'm not going to bore you with doing all of that kind of stuff. But let's just say we did all our work to fix the weights. Let's go ahead and let's apply that movement from our mocap to our pug here. And so this is what the, actually let me open this up. So when you go to, again, it's an iPhone app. You can export out the video and also the actual joints and mocap from that iPhone app, the Move One app. And so what that looks like is something like this. Whoops, that's an image. Hold on, right here. Where's one of the C4D, MP4, 3D? Actually, let's show, one of these. Yeah, so, that just opened that. But when you bring that into Cinema 4D, what you're gonna get is this character with a simple mesh. And you don't need any of that, just delete it. And you're gonna see there's our, this is like a little waddle penguin mocap that I did. Again, I'm not showing the video for that. And then all you gotta do is, everything's just rotated wrong. So the hips are where all the animation starts and the root's just there as like a placeholder. So I'm just gonna go and hit Shift and Control and just delete all these keyframes here. And I'm just gonna move this -90. And so that's facing upwards, okay? So there's that. And then what's really nice too is when you go to -1 frame, you're gonna get that in the T-pose. So it's very important that you have the T-pose for your Mixamo rig and the T-pose from the mocap rig. And so once you go, and let's go here. So I just copied and pasted the mocap rig here, which is this root in the hips, into my project with the Mixamo joints and my pug mesh, okay? So how do I get that animation of me doing the sumo? And I'm just gonna make sure this is 300 frames. Again, another limitation of the Move 1 beta is you only can do 10 seconds of mocap. But this is an iPhone. Like, look how good this mocap looks. No jitter, no intersecting. I was totally expecting my like forearm to intersect with my thigh, but it's using AI to be like, no, that's not supposed to happen. Like, there's supposed to be a volume there, right? So it fixed that. And so I did no cleanup to that mocap at all, right? And that's from your phone. That's crazy. So, but we need to get this rig to apply to this Mixamo joint rig here. And how to do that is like just a few little steps here. So what I'm gonna do is right click on this Mixamo rig here, go to rigging tags, and go to character definition. So what this does, if you add it to your Mixamo hips there, I'm gonna open the manager, and all this does is basically like, okay, where are all the joints, the torso, left arm, where are all those things, and can we extract that and define them? So I'm gonna go and extract skeleton. You can see that it's gonna recognize 26 joints. And what I'm gonna do is also set this as reference pose so we can always go back to that T-pose, okay? So that's the reference pose, the T-pose, and we're gonna match this mocap T-pose to this T-pose here, and from there, once you match the T-poses up, the animation's all gonna transfer. So we also need to go to this hips here, so we have the hips from Mixamo, the hips from our mocap. I'm gonna right click, go to rigging, go to character definition, open the manager again. I'll close out of that, the Mixamo one, and I'll also do extract skeleton. You see that there's a lot more joints to work with because we have all the finger joints that we don't have from our Mixamo rig, but that's okay. It's defining the torso, all the important stuff. And so I'm gonna also say set reference pose, because if I ever need to go back to where I started, that's gonna be the reference pose of that T-pose, so I'm just gonna make sure I set that too. And so we set the T-pose for the mocap rig, we set the T-pose for the hips, we extracted all those joints, and it's very important that everything's named very well like this, and Mixamo does a great job of having that naming convention. And then all we have to do at this point is say create solver. And what that does is it adds another tag to your Mixamo hips, and all you gotta do is define the source character. Where is the source of the mocap coming from? Well, it's this. I'm just gonna drag that in there and hit play, boom. Just applied that mocap to my little pug here. But again, this is a stylized character, so everything's kind of scrunched down. So we need to do a little bit of work here to kind of fix this a little bit more. So if we go into here, got our rig, all that kind of stuff. What we can do to fix this is, number one, we can actually just bake all that animation from the mocap to our Mixamo rig here. So what I'm going to do that is, I can't middle mouse click, but if you middle mouse click, you can select everything. So let's just go and unfold all, and we'll select all the Mixamo items here, open up our timeline, drag and drop all those joints into here, and then go to functions, bake objects, and we're gonna uncheck create copy and uncheck clean tracks. We don't need to create a copy, and we're just gonna bake down all of that animation that we are getting from the mocap joints, and we're gonna bake it onto the Mixamo joints. So now we can just have the Mixamo joints and delete that mocap joints. So you can see now all that is there. So at this point, you can see that, and again, this is a limitation because of the fact that my character is so squatty and stylized, is that you can see that the hips are kind of moving up when the hips should actually be staying stationary. It's something to do with like the IK solver in the transfer there. So it's actually pretty easy to fix it though. So if I go in, the main thing I need to fix is the hips, because the hips are moving up and down when they should be kind of staying stationary. So you're gonna see that when we baked out everything, and what I need to deal with is just the Y position of the hip joints. You can see this has a keyframe on every single frame here. So we need to basically remove a lot of this, because really it's only going up and down, right? If I go to my dope sheet mode by hitting tab, you can see that the base motion is pretty simple, and we got just so many keyframes. So we can reduce those keyframes by going, well, we can do two things. If you just want to adjust the mocap without removing keyframes, what you can do is select a track, go to reduce modification mode, and what that's going to do when you're in this reduce modification mode is give you basically a couple of keyframes here on this Bezier handle. You can adjust this up and down. So you're not going to touch the original keyframes, but you're just going to adjust a layer on top. Okay, so you could do that and adjust things this way. So whenever it goes up, you can just kind of compensate for when it should not go up. And so when the hips go up like that, like actually it should stay down. So I'll just be, go like that and like that. And so I'm just trying to stabilize the hips. So that's one way to do it, is using the reduce modification mode. Another way to do this with actually removing some of the keyframes here, and this is kind of destructive, and sometimes you don't want to do this, is going to functions, key reducer. And if you adjust this reduction foyer, because it's French, so I guess that's how you pronounce it, it's removing keyframes, but again, keeping the basic curve that we had there, right? And so if we go and we hit play, now if we want to adjust this, we can just okay, well, the hip's moving up, but we want it to stay down, so I'll just move that down and then move this up. And so I'm just adjusting things kind of like that. And with a little bit of that kind of work, you can see that, I think this is the fixed version. This is the more, where I kind of smoothed everything out. The hips are kind of planted, but again, our character is so stylized, it's very hunched over. So how do we fix that? Well, what we're gonna do is use the Mixamo control rig to be able to add adjustments on top of the existing rig. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna select the Mixamo hips. I'm gonna go to character object, go to object, and then we're just gonna go to Mixamo control rig. And then you just build out the different components, the pelvis. I'm gonna hold shift and control and do the both arms, shift control and do both legs. And that's all we need. And then we're gonna go to adjust, and you're gonna see everything snaps to our existing squatty little rig here. And the knees should bend forward, which they do. And then we're gonna go to animate. And you can see all these different controllers here. And so nothing's going to happen because we need to do some retargeting here and transfer the weights from our old rig to this new Mixamo control rig. So all we need to do for the weight transfer is go to our, actually if I just search or go to this menu here, you can go to tags and, well actually no, that's not going to work. Never mind. How do you define weights is you don't actually drag in the weight tag, you drag in the actual mesh. So that's always a thing I do. But you can actually do this easily by getting this eyedropper and going and saying like, okay, that's the geometry, that's geometry, that's geometry, that's geometry, this is geometry, that's geometry, that is all has those weight tags on it. And so I think we got everything. And we're going to go transfer weights. You can see everything kind of moved down a little bit. So something happened. And then all we got to do is retarget all the joints from the Mixamo joints to the new joint system that we have in this character rig. So I'll just do retarget all and cross our fingers. We got these controllers that are now applying adjustments on top of that Mixamo rig that we had, right? Which is super cool. So now, again, we're back in our T-pose, but if I hit play, we're back here. So to fix this from being so hunched over, the hunched pug of Notre Dame, we're just going to go and just rotate the hips up, rotate this up, and then you can't see the head controller, so what I'm going to do is just hide the rig, and you can see the head controller is really small, but again, my character's so stylized, it's got a very thick neck, so this is made for more humanoid characters, so all you need to do is select that, hit T for scale, and then hold the 7 key down, and that'll scale this up without scaling any of the other components. So holding the 7 key down, so this is much bigger. I'll turn this back on, and now I can go and actually select that head and move this up. And so now I can lift the hips up, so it's not so squatty, and adjust this. And so now it's looking a little bit better. Facing forward, boom. So we got something like this. And so another thing too is like I want to keep the head kind of straight as well. Whoops. What we can do for that is just set some keyframes. So I'll do auto keyframe mode, set a keyframe there. And so I'll just go through and just adjust so the head is kind of always looking forward, but you still have that kind of like organic like movement going on. And so every time I move that with the auto keyframing on, it's setting a new keyframe. So we're just kind of stabilizing this, and this is how you can kind of stabilize mocap a little bit too. Whoop, and the head goes really weird there. And so I can even set some keyframes on the hips as well. I can even set some keyframes on the legs and like have the leg really go up beforehand and go down. So something like that. And so you just basically, do a little bit of tweaking here and there, and the arms maybe need to go out as well. And so a little bit of tweaking on top of that mocap, that very, realistic mocap because it came from a human being. And I, did a little bit more tweaks, and you ended up getting something a little bit like this. So you can see all the keyframes I did. These are all the keyframes I added to the controllers here that are controlling the legs and stuff like that come from our Mixamo control rig. And we got a little bit of that. So doing a little bit of cleanup from that mocap that we got, and then adding Mixamo control rig to add another layer of control on top of the character. And you can even go in and add more rigs to this. And I actually did this in a past SIGGRAPH where I showed how you can actually add more joints on top of this, like to add eye controls and stuff like that, because you can add joints for your eyes and just add that. So let me just, because I'm the last person, I can go as long as I want. That's what they told me. Don't say no, I can do what I want. See, Paul gave me, that's the CEO right there, folks. So I want to have the eyes be rigged up here. So I kind of chopped off the first few frames here because that's kind of the T-pose. Whoops. And the neck is kind of weird there. Go and reset, transform. Whoop. Okay, so we want to add some joints to the eyes. Hopefully this works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some like eye controls. So here is the eyes. And I'm going to go and basically add some joints. So everything is controlled by joints. So I'll do joint tool. And you want to get pretty nitty gritty in here and make sure you're. Let me try to see if I can get this in the actual T-pose. Okay, so let's see. Reset bind pose. Reset bind pose. And let's go to here. So I adjusted so many things. Let's see. All right, let's go. All right, let me just show the thing how it should work. So let me go and I'll go to character, joint tool, and I'll add joint and add a joint. I'll try to align that with the actual eyeball. And everything, like I should have kept the T-poses, but for some reason I don't have the T-poses anymore to start from. Let's just align this. Oops. Here's those joints right here. Underneath the hair. I don't know what I got on the hair. And I'll just move this over. And again, you would want to make sure you do your alignment here and make sure the eyeball is all aligned. But you can see the joint right there. And let me actually let me do quick shading. Let me turn off materials so we can actually see stuff. Materials. Boop. Okay. So you can kind of see what I'm trying to do. No, not that. Just aligning that joint. And so what I can do is bind this eye to those new joints. And how to do that is to add joints to anything. Number one, you want the joints to follow along with the existing character rig. So I would just need to go into the Mixamo control rig here. And here's the head joint in there somewhere. And let's turn on lines. Okay, so I actually have this hidden. The joints are hidden, so never mind. So we got quick shading. So there's a joint there, trust me, it's just not showing up right now. And we just need to go and throw in the eye joints. Let's actually rename this. So eye, and then I1. And really we should be doing left eye. Left eye. It's very important to name things when you're doing the rigging thing. And we're just going to place that in the head. So what this is going to do now is follow along with the head. See, there's that joint following along. But if we rotate this, it's not affecting the eye, because remember, if a joint isn't weighted to geometry, it's not going to affect or distort it. So what we need to do is find the eyes, go to our weight tag here, and then basically you can see the joints that are affecting the eyes. It's just the head, okay, and the Mixamo head joint. So I'm just going to go and drag in these two joints here, and then go into the weight tag of the eyes. Let's make this shrunken down here, and go into the joints. And you can see that now it's just the head, but if I go and I can go to polygon mode, and the eyes jumped up here to the rigging pose, and I just need to double click twice in polygon mode to select that eyeball, and I just need to say, okay, I need to weight paint these two joints and not the head to this eye. So with those two joints selected, I can go to commands and say, apply those two joint influence to that eye. You'll see that it changed color to that blue, so perfect. And so now, if we hit polygon mode, you can see, whoops, there is the eye. The eye went somewhere. And let's go and rotate. Where'd the eye go? I lost my eye. My eye's up there. Well, you can see that if I was in my T-pose, this would work. But I basically rigged the eye to those new joints. And this is why you need your T-pose saved. But trust me, you can add new joints on top of other. If you want to learn more about it, watch my other SIGGRAPH presentation. And you can also see that I added a jiggle deformer to the hair to get a little jiggly hair motion. So you can see, whoop, that's really jiggly. So I just totally messed this whole entire rig up. Let me go and revert to save. And I want to show you the jiggly hair. So there's the jiggly hair right there. That's all procedural using a jiggle deformer. It does what it says. It makes things jiggly. So you can add a lot of jiggle. You can add some gravity to it. You can have gravity pulling up. You can have the hair fall up and do all that kind of stuff. So you're not just limited to what you can do with like a Mixamo control rig and applying stuff on top of it. You can add more joints to it. You can rig up the eyes. You can rig up the face. You can rig up the eyebrows. You can even put joints and do IK dynamics to the hair. And I know I've done a IK dynamics thing in a previous SIGGRAPH too. But it is incredible that you can get mocap built on top of it using Cinema 4D and all of its tools. And what I started with was a single video from my phone, which is pretty incredible. And I'm not going to show any of the other weird video. I'll show one last thing of my. I haven't finished the penguin yet, but here's a Mixamo of another mocap I did for the penguin. Do a little booty shake. So yeah, to transfer that data, it was so easy doing those character definition tags and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully everyone has fun. Again, go sign up for that beta for the Move 1 because it's super powerful and you can have a lot of fun. And I was like shocked to see how well it works with the character definition and all that kind of stuff. But as always, like you always want to add that human touch to any mocap, especially for stylized stuff. I love that we live in a world with like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Spider-Verse, where you got like, you can definitely see the artist's hand in all that animation. So I recommend if you ever do mocap, especially for stylized character, inject a little personality, because as Brad Bird said, the illusion animation's all about creating the illusion of life, and you can't make the illusion if you don't live one. I butchered that line, but you can't create the illusion of life if you don't have one yourself. So go out, have a good life, have it inform your art, and thank you very much.
All right. EJ Hassenfratz, folks. That's a pretty complete presentation, but let's see what happens when I say, does anyone have any questions? Oh, wait,
not
hand
that guy.
Halfway going up. Rob, what do you got?
So that's a good question. So all these like mocap apps, they're
the question?
Oh, so the question was, and that's a great question. It's shocking coming from you. No, we're kind of friends.
Almost a friend.
So that was a good question. He asked if there's one for Android, and it's very funny because as of right now, a lot of these apps are just on iOS just because of the technologies that's in. I know Move. Or Maxon Moves is also, or is there Android for Maxon Moves?
No, it's iOS.
So it's iOS only. So a lot of these motion tracked Android phones just don't have the gyroscope and all the technology that's in the iPhones to do all this stuff. So it's very, we live in interesting times where we have this stuff in our iPhones in our pocket. Well, if you have an iPhone, but I don't even know if the team is even planning on Android. I think they might. Winbush would know, I'm sure. Actually, we have
some
I'll have to ask.
Here.
Yeah, we have some Velvet we can find.
Talk to Rick.
Yeah, or if Maxon Moves is going to have Android support in the future too. But I think it's limited by the hardware in those phones. So unless the phones have, that's the thing with iPhones. It's all standard. Like everyone's iPhone's exactly the same.
Yeah, we're not going to start that debate.
No, we're not. We're not doing it here.
Different show.
We're not doing it here.
Everything standards. Yeah, question right here.
So great question. So the Maxon Moves also has a facial capture. Yeah, the question. Sorry, I'm terrible. This is why you're here.
It's first time. So the question is, as far as capturing your moves animation, then applying it to characters. Is that it? The workflow?
Applying the facial rig too. So there's excellent training on Cineversity that shows that workflow. You can do it, and I think it's fairly similar to that like character definition thing I did where. It's like, you set the points using and I think it also uses the character rig as well. But yeah, it's got the retargeting.
The retarget.
Yeah. So you can do it. And there, check out cineversity.com and there's a series on there. Awesome, thank you.
We're actually getting questions.
I know that I never. Well, usually I go over, and I'm not the end of the day, so I just blow through my time. But
usually you just avoid that by working late.
Yeah. Oh, and I have. If anyone wants any of, I got character pins and stickers of my pug and stuff. So if anyone wants anything,
we got some goodies laying around. We can bring some to the front as well for everybody. Sorry, internet.
Sorry, you have to be here to enjoy.
Yeah, you got to enjoy the pug stickers and the pins.
Yes.
All right. Any other last questions for EJ? Excellent. Well, that is going to conclude day 2 here at SIGGRAPH at the Maxon booth. And for those of you who hung out with us, come get your pens. And for those of you online on the interwebs, we will see you tomorrow morning, bright and early at 10:30 with our first presenter tomorrow. So we'll see you then. Ciao.